Welcome, folks. 30 seconds of that ghastly monstrosity cost $5.25 million. That's the price of a 30-second spot in the Super Bowl. But it was, without question, the lowest scoring in history. They only had, it was 3-3 in most of the game, and finally the New England scored a touchdown. Yeah. And other than that, it was just simply ghastly. But Bill Belichick was just a master of defense. He set it up, and they tied up the Rams. But I tell you, it was one boring monster.
It really was. Well, it was so low scoring. I mean, you just were sort of taking
broke records. Nothing has ever been as bad. But it was 3-3. I mean, it was a big deal when finally the Rams hit a field goal after all that, the first half. It was, I mean, just horrible. But $5.25 million for 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
And those spots weren't any good. It used to be those spots were fun. The spots weren't any good.
Yeah, I was watched for the spots.
Yeah, but not any longer. They were terrible. Yeah. And the entertainment in the middle. Talking to Chris here, he said he couldn't understand what they were saying. Neither could I. I thought it was because I was getting old. I couldn't understand what they were saying and what they were doing.
Yeah, I didn't even see that.
Oh, a lot of
it started out strong, though. I thought Gladys Knight did an amazing job on
that. Was the highlight of the whole thing. Gladys Knight singing the national anthem. That was beautiful. Oh, and I think the flyover was good, too.
Gladys and the flyover.
Yeah. But the rest of it, ghastly. And somebody suggested, I think it's got a lot of merit, they ought to play that game on Saturday. They don't have to. There's nothing on Saturday that's conflicting.
It gets late.
Well, there are people in other parts of the world who can't get it, and this would mean that people could get a day to recover and chill out. I don't know if they're at home drinking or eating pizza or what they're doing, but they can, whatever it is, they can have a day to chill out. Yeah. But it was horrible. Okay.
But the wings were good.
I didn't have any wings. I did get a pizza. All right. Well, in the news, the Democrats ran against their Republican challenger on the basis of race, that he was going to be racially insensitive, that the Republicans were filled with racial insensitivity, and that the Democrats were going to bring in a new era of equality and blessing. Well, the Democrat governor, Northern, who apparently is a pretty able neurosurgeon, pediatric neurosurgeon, is under fire to resign. And, well, here's the story. He's meeting again today with his team after he said, I'm not going to step down over that picture that was taken at the EVMS Medical School years ago.
Well, Northam is under extreme pressure from other Democrats to resign, including presidential candidates. Amber Strong brings us the story from Washington.
Governor Ralph Northam says he's staying in office despite that growing chorus of demands for his resignation. In Richmond,
eat this one and resign.
The angry voices of Virginians fill the streets outside the governor's mansion. On Friday, Northam apologized and said he was one of two people pictured in that racist photo appearing in the 1984 Eastern Virginia Medical School yearbook. But on Saturday,
I was appalled that they appeared on my page, but I believe then and now that I am not either of the people in that photo.
His friend and former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe isn't buying it.
Instinctively, you know if you put black paint on your face. You know if you put a hood on.
He's just one of a multitude of Democrats condemning the governor. With race relations a likely hot-button issue for 2020, nearly every major declared and potential candidate were on the record early, rebuking Northam and saying he should resign. President Trump also joining in. But at least one Democrat thinks Northam should remain in office.
Because I think it is a rush to judgment before we know all of the facts. Facts that we do know are that Ralph has expanded Medicaid to hundreds of thousands of uninsured Virginians, a disproportionate number of whom are African Americans.
Even so, McAuliffe, like other Democrats, believe it's time to move on to new leadership.
We have to move Virginia forward. Justin Fairfax, African American lieutenant governor, will do a great job of bringing folks back together.
39-year-old Fairfax is a Columbia Law graduate and the second African-American in history to win a statewide election in Virginia. Amber Strong, CBN News, Washington.
Well, I'll have to hand Northern's one thing. He sure has put Virginia in the headlines, but he's been on the front page of the paper, and I'm not sure that's the way Virginia, being a Virginian, I'm not sure I'm too wild about that. Yeah. There was something else about late horse Harry Lee that's more, there's a book about him that perhaps is better than Ralph Northern, but they ran on race. They ran and attacked the Republican on race, and now the chickens have come home to roost. That's what happens when you're hypocritical to start out. Well, in other news, the Pentagon is taking steps to secure our southern border as President Trump prepares to deliver his State of the Union speech tomorrow night. John Jessup has that.
That's right, Pat, and it will be the president's second State of the Union address Tuesday, even as negotiations continue in Congress to avoid another partial government shutdown. The speech focuses on a theme of unity in America, and Trump hopes to use the address to hit on key issues such as immigration, health care, and national security. The speech comes as the Pentagon is sending more than 3,000 troops to the U.S.-Mexico border to beef up security. The president still wants Congress to authorize money for a border wall, but House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says under no condition will they allocate money for a wall. Well, Israel has started reinforcing its own border fence along the Gaza Strip. Israel will build a 20-foot-high steel barrier that will run the length of the territory. It already has an underground wall aimed at stopping Hamas attack tunnels beneath the border. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says the new barrier will prevent terrorists from getting into Israel on the ground. Pat, back to you.
Isn't it interesting the Democrats say we're not going to give you a wall, yet Israel has put up a wall. They've got several of them. But the border that they've had going into Jordan has not only had a fence of sorts, but they have a wide strip of land that is plowed continuously, and in it are sensors and other things. So if any terrorist comes sneaking across, not only will they find his footprints immediately, but they might have something that'll blow him up. But they'll certainly know when people are coming across. And it's a smart fence, but the Israelis have used it. And then they had a big fence in Jerusalem dividing, you know, the left bank and the right bank and all those banks they've got over there. But their walls have been very successful. And it's amazing that people in the Democratic Party say the walls don't work. They do work if they're done well. John?
Pat, when President Trump first announced American troops would leave Syria, it sent shockwaves through the region. Turkish President Erdogan threatened to invade northeast Syria, where a number of ethnic minorities, including thousands of Christians, live. Chris Mitchell recently traveled there to talk to those in the path of this potential storm.
The people of this region saw almost immediately the effect of President Trump's announcement.
The impact of the withdrawal of the U.S. forces is mainly because the Turks have started threatening us.
This is the Turkish-Syrian border. Behind me, you can see the Turkish flag flying. One proposal is that Turkey would control a 20-mile security zone all along the Turkish-Syrian border. For most of the people we talked to said that would lead to a disaster.
Most of our Christian people lives in this area, and if any military operation happened in this area, it will be real fear on our people.
Yet Erdogan insists on this security zone.
We expect the promise to establish a safe zone to be fulfilled within a few months to ensure our country is protected from terrorists on our borders. Otherwise, we will establish this buffer zone ourselves.
Those terrorists are actually U.S. allies who fought together to drive out ISIS. While Erdogan typically only mentions the Kurds, northeast Syria is also home to Christians, Arabs, Yazidis, and other minorities. This melting pot has now established a new democracy here.
And now he wants to control the entire region. So he uses the pursuit of ISIS as his pet project, as smokescreen, to get at the rest of us. And that's why he sees democracy as a danger.
Recently, Erdogan set his sights on this part of northeast Syria, east of the Euphrates, saying when it is cleared from militants, the millions of people will have a chance to return to their homes. He made similar statements last year before his army, which is part of NATO, overran the Syrian city of Afrin. Along with jihadist mercenaries, it displaced hundreds of thousands while searching for Christians and burning churches. Some see that invasion and this year's push for the security zone as part of Erdogan's vision to revive the Ottoman Empire. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Turkish-Syrian border.
A revealing report. Now let's go back over to Pat for more.
Chris Mitchell is back from Jerusalem, back in Jerusalem from his trip to Syria. And Chris, what did the people tell you? What are they saying is going to happen to them?
Well, Pat, we talked to many people. We talked to military leaders, governmental leaders. We talked to church leaders. In terms of Christians, they're terrified, Pat. They're saying that if there's no protection for them, they're really fearing a possible Turkish invasion. At the very least, 20 miles of that security zone, most of the Christians live in that region. And they have two collective memories, Pat. First of all, last year we talked about Afrin. That's when the Turkish army, along with the Free Syrian Army, came in, burned churches, looted, basically a population displacement. And the other thing, Pat, is they have a collective memory of the 1915 Armenian genocide. Many of the people we talked to, their parents, grandparents, their great-grandparents had come from there, resettled in that region. So they have a very severe fear of what Turkey's President Erdogan may do.
Chris, you know, the intelligence community said that ISIS is not dead at all. The president has said, well, it's all finished. But ISIS is still active over there, isn't it?
They are. In fact, when we were there, Pat, they were warning us about possible ISIS cells in some of the towns and villages that we are in. Certainly, it's restricted as far as the caliphate goes to a very small pocket in southeast Syria. But, Pat, what's happening right now, because of the fear of Turkey, this new government in northeast Syria is negotiating with the Assad regime, mediated by Russia. And what's happened, if the fear of Turkey is so much and they align themselves with the Assad regime, what that's going to do is going to bring in Iran. Right now, there are Shiite militias on the other side of the Tigris River, ready to come in to fill the vacuum of the United States if they pull out. That's going to make it more dangerous for Israel. It's going to make it more dangerous for U.S. troops in the region. And certainly that's something they don't want to happen, but that's the fear they have, the fear of Turkey and trying to align with the Assad regime.
Chris, the president has said, well, okay, we're going to pull out, but we can go back in if there's a serious threat. Is that a realistic option?
I don't think so, Pat, and you only have to look at Israel's example. In 2000, they pulled out of the security zone in South Lebanon. Look what happened. Who filled the vacuum? It was Hezbollah. Now there's about 150,000 rockets there. In 2005, they pulled out of the Gaza Strip. What do you have now? You have Hamas with rockets and tunnels coming into Israel. And so it sounds easy to be able to go back, but it's very hard. For example, if say the Shiite militias, the Turkish army, the Free Syrian Army, fills the vacuum by the United States, it's going to be very hard for the United States to go back there, put boots on the ground, and try to take that land back. So that's why many people think strategically stay in that place. And that would keep all these nations, even 2,000 U.S. troops can keep 4 nations at bay if they just stay in that land. That's what the people that we talked to, military leaders, governmental leaders, and Christians say, please stay so that we won't have nefarious forces that are going to fill that. And, Pat, I want to add one thing. This new government is probably the biggest story I've heard in many years. It's a democratic form of government. It's not just the Kurds. It's Assyrians, it's Syria, Christians, it's Arabs. And all of them were saying, we want to preserve what we have. We want our democracy to be a model just like the United States. And so they're looking to inspiration for us. And they're saying, please don't let this democracy be undermined by either the Assad regime, by Turkey, by Shiite militias, or Russia.
Chris, the Christians have said, as I understand in your report initially that I've read, that they say, is not your president a Christian? Why is he allowing us to be slaughtered? Are they saying, is that what they're saying?
That's exactly what they're saying, Pat. And that was really one of the most poignant things. We had sat down with a pastor and his wife, and the wife was saying, we love President Trump. We know he's a Christian. We know he prays. But we wonder, does he know we're here? And they kept saying as well that in December, President Trump signed a bill that would protect Christians and other minorities in the Nineveh Plain in Iraq. But they're saying, what about us? There's about 100,000 evangelicals in Syria, Christians and Assyrian Christians inside that region. And they're saying, don't forget us, that we're here. He may not have realized there were that many Christians in that region. And so that was the question they were asking us. Does he really know that we're here and that we're in peril because of Turkey, Shiite militias, the Assad regime, and even Russia?
Chris, thank you so much. Chris reporting now from Jerusalem. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to say this as clearly as I can. If we pull out and permit a slaughter of those Christians and those Kurds and those Yazidis and those other people who long for democracy, if we allow that to happen, it'll be a stain on our nation that we cannot erase, and it will be eternally a stain on President Trump. He cannot escape it if he lets it happen. We've got to stay in there. But what I'm suggesting is that it would be so simple. The Kurds already have a government that spans that entire area. It goes from Turkey and northern Syria. We could block off Iran. We could block off Russia. We could block off Assad in Syria. We could block off the Kurds if we have a viable country. And there's no question there could be a Trump declaration to say we recognize a homeland for the Kurdish people, and we recognize that this nation of Kurdistan is a viable nation, and it is our ally, and we will arm it and let them do the fighting. If it would be so simple to do, it'd be so brilliant, and it would just make the answer. But folks, if we allow those people to be butchered, if we allow our Christian brothers and sisters to be butchered, there will be no ever taking that stain away, and we will pay a price that is unimaginable. So please pray. And if you want to write the White House, write it and let some pressure go to the president to know there are a lot of people in America that do not want our Christian brothers and sisters to be slaughtered in northern Syria.